I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. The House Judiciary Committee held a hearing on a post-Roe v. Wade America on Thursday. Congressman Ted Lieu discussed the recent incident of a 10-year-old girl in Ohio who was raped, impregnated, and then denied an abortion under state law, forcing her to travel out of state. This case gained widespread attention in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and some on the right have doubted that this was a real case. Here's more from the hearing.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Adler. You're going to hear a lot of words from my Republican colleagues today on this committee, and all I have to do is give you one example that is devastating to their statements, and that is this. A 10-year-old girl got raped in Ohio and got pregnant. She could not get an abortion because none of the exceptions in Ohio law would have authorized it. And what did MAGA Republicans do? They smeared her. They said she was lying. In fact, at least one Republican member of this committee publicly tweeted that she lied and then quietly deleted that tweet when, guess what? Her perpetrator was arrested. I call on any MAGA Republican who smeared this little girl to publicly apologize. But the story gets worse than that, because this little girl had to go to Indiana to get an abortion or abortion care. And guess what MAGA Republicans are doing now? They're going after the doctor. That's right, the doctor who helped this little girl. Because the truth is, MAGA and far-right Republicans want government-mandated pregnancies for everyone, including 10-year-old rape victims. That is extreme. Now, let's go to the Supreme Court's radical Dobbs decision. And when you read it, it's very clear that multiple Supreme Court justices lied in order to get confirmed. You cannot square what the majority said in Dobbs with the statements by Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Now, let's look what this opinion said. One of the reasons that they overturned Roe v. Wade is they said that the Constitution makes no reference to abortion. So, Professor Murray, let me ask you this question. Does the Constitution make any reference to birth control pills?
No, it does not.
So under the Supreme Court's radical far-right opinion, they could give politicians the power to decide who can get birth control pills. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Professor Murray, does the Constitution make any reference to condoms?
No.
So under the Supreme Court's radical opinion, these justices could give politicians the power to ban condoms. Isn't that right?
It is possible, yeah.
Legal Director Warbelow, question for you. Does the Constitution make any reference to gay marriage?
It does not. My apologies, it does not.
Under the Supreme Court's radical decision, they could give politicians the right to ban gay marriage. Isn't that right?
Certainly, Justice Thomas invited those challenges and is welcoming the opportunity to revisit those questions by the court.
Thank you. Does the Constitution make any reference to interracial marriage?
It does not.
So under the Supreme Court's radical decision, they could certainly give politicians the right to decide whether or not to ban interracial marriage. Isn't that right?
That is the invitation that has been made.
You know what the Constitution does make reference to, by the way? A well-regulated militia. I hope the Supreme Court actually looks at that phrase and actually adheres to it. But that's another matter. So let's return now to this issue. Under the Dobbs decision, the Supreme Court justices said that Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. That means Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh had to have known that during their confirmation hearings because Roe v. Wade was decided 50 years ago.
Will the gentleman yield for exactly what the justices said during their confirmation hearing? Yeah, I didn't think so.
Did any of them say Roe v. Wade was egregiously wrong from the start? No, they didn't. In fact, they said the opposite. You know, they could have done what Justice Thomas did, which was really not talk about it. They could have said, I'm not going to talk about Roe v. Wade. They could say, I'm not going to answer your question. But that is not what Justice Kavanaugh did. He went above and beyond to intentionally mislead the American people. He even went and talked about Casey. You know what he said about Casey? He said, you know, Casey is precedent on top of precedent. He was trying to give assurances to the U.S. Senate and the American public that he was not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Same with Justice Gorsuch. They didn't have to do that, right? They could have done what other justices did. They could have given themselves wiggle room, be silent, say, I'm not going to answer the question. But they didn't. They lied. They specifically lied to the American people and to the U.S. Senate. And that's why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I have written a letter to U.S. Senate asking them to make a finding on whether Justice Gorsuch and Kavanaugh lied to the American people. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, those words should be struck. You cannot accuse a
The
Supreme Court
time of
justice
the
of
gentleman
lying.
has expired.